The heavy thud of boots echoed down the Westwood Enterprises hallway before the double doors burst open. Uniformed officers swept in, their expressions carved from stone. The lead inspector held up a warrant. Alicia Thompson, his voice cut. Through the gasps, you are under arrest for attempted assault and the murder of Robert Mallory. You have the right to remain silent, Lies. Alicia shrieked, but her voice cracked under the weight of fear. She twisted against the officer's grip, her designer dress tearing at the shoulder. This is all Ashley's doing, she said. Me up? Yes, Ashley said coolly, stepping into the center of the room so every onlooker, including the stunned board members, could hear. I set you up to tell the truth, and you handed it to me. Cameras clicked. Guests whispered. Across the room, Mrs. Westwood's painted smile faltered, a flicker of dread rippling through her mask. She glanced at Brandon, who was frozen mid-step, his champagne glass trembling. If Alicia talked, their carefully buried secrets might crawl to the surface, as the officers dragged Alicia toward the exit. She spat over her shoulder, eyes blazing. At Ashley? You think you've won? You don't know who you're dealing with. Ashley's gaze didn't waver. On the contrary, she murmured. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, okay? And you're no longer my biggest problem. Yeah. Murmurs swelled. The gala's atmosphere shifted, no longer a celebration, but a simmering court of public opinion. Mrs. Westwood's hand tightened around her clutch until her knuckles whitened. Revenge number 3 had just begun. The gala orchestra's soft jazz dissolved into awkward silence as Alicia's shouts faded down the marble corridor. The guests milled in uneasy clusters, their eyes darting between Ashley and Mrs. Westwood like they were watching a silent chess match. Ashley handed David's phone to the inspector, murmuring something only he could hear. He gave a sharp nod, pocketed the device, and left with his men. Mrs. Westwood's heels clicked toward her, slow, deliberate, like a predator testing the wind. Her perfume arrived a second before her voice, saccharine but sharp. Well played, Ashley, she said. Smile stretched thin. But in this family, making enemies is dangerous. You should know your place. Ashley turned fully to face her, the chandelier light catching the cool glint in her eyes. My place. She stepped closer until their pearls almost touched. Funny you mention that, 'cause I think your place is about to be much smaller. Mrs. Westwood's mask didn't crack, but her pupils dilated just enough for Ashley to catch it. What exactly are you implying? Ashley slipped a folded envelope from her clutch and placed it in Mrs. Westwood's manicured hand. Consider it a preview. Read it before midnight. Otherwise, the board will read it for you. The envelope was light, but Mrs. Westwood held it like it might explode. Her fingers tightened around it, the tendons in her wrist straining. Before she could respond, David, now fully awake, hair still slightly damp from the water Ashley used, appeared at Ashley's side. His voice was hoarse but firm. Mother, whatever you think you're about to do, don't. Mrs. Westwood's gaze flicked between them, fury and calculation warring behind her flawless facade. Then, with the grace of someone who'd been dodging scandal for decades, she smiled and glided away, the envelope hidden in her clutch. Ashley exhaled slowly. Revenge number 3 wasn't finished, but the first move had been made. Midnight draped Westwood Manor in shadows and silence. The only sound was the faint ticking of the antique clock in the study. Mrs. Westwood sat at her mahogany desk, the envelope Ashley had given her lying in front of her like a venomous snake. She poured herself a measure of scotch, took a slow sip, and finally slid it open. 3 glossy photographs slid out, followed by a single sheet of paper. The photos showed a younger Mrs. Westwood with a man whose face was unmistakable. Senator Grant Halberg, now under investigation for embezzlement. One image captured them in a hotel suite, his hand too familiar on her waist. Another showed them exchanging an envelope. The third was a wire transfer slip from Halberg's private account to a shell company tied to Mrs. Westwood's name. The paper bore only one sentence, handwritten in Ashley's precise script. Step down quietly. Or I won't be the one who makes these public. The press will. Mrs. Westwood's hand trembled, but her jaw tightened. She burned the scotch down her throat, then reached for her phone. Ashley, she said when the line connected, her voice smooth but low. Clever girl, but you have no idea who you're playing with. On the other end, Ashley's tone was light, almost amused. Oh, I think I do. And I'm not playing. I'm winning. There was a pause, long enough for Mrs. Westwood to hear the faint sound of David's voice in the background. It's calling Ashley's name. Ashley continued, her voice silk over steel. You have 24 hours. Resign from the board, issue a statement about health reasons, and disappear from the family's business affairs. Or I start with the finance committee. Work my way to the tabloids. Mrs. Westwood's nails dug into her desk. This isn't over. It will be, Ashley said, and hung up. Mrs. Westwood sat in the dark for a long moment. The photos spread before her like a chessboard she was losing. Then her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. If Ashley thought she would surrender, without a counterattack, she was sorely mistaken. The Westwood Enterprises boardroom gleamed under the morning sun. The skyline spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows. The air buzzed with restrained tension. Every seat was filled, directors in crisp suits, assistants lining the walls. And a few curious reporters accidentally allowed in by Ashley's design. Mrs. Westwood sat at the head of the table, poised in her signature cream blazer, pearls perfectly aligned. David occupied the chair beside her, pale but composed after the night's ordeal. Ashley entered last in a navy sheath dress and low bun, carrying a slim leather folder. Shall we begin? Mrs. Westwood's voice was all authority, but her fingers drummed faintly on the polished table. Ashley's smile was professional, but her eyes sharp. Before we proceed with the quarterly agenda, I'd like to address an urgent matter concerning the integrity of this board. Several members shifted in their seats. Ashley opened her folder and laid out 3 photographs, face down. These, she said, her voice carrying to the farthest corner, are copies of evidence I've submitted to the Corporate Ethics Committee. They connect a sitting board member to offshore accounts funded by a politician currently under federal investigation. A murmur swept the room. Mrs. Westwood's chin lifted. This is outrageous. Ashley flipped the first photograph over. Gasps followed. Then the second, and the third. The wire transfer slip enlarged and unmistakable. David's gaze flicked from the images to his mother, his expression unreadable. This company, Ashley continued, has weathered enough scandal. If we allow this to continue, we risk losing not only public trust, but our largest government contracts. Therefore, I formally propose the immediate resignation of Mrs. Victoria Westwood from all corporate positions effective today. Mrs. Westwood's knuckles whitened on the table edge. You will regret this, Ashley. Possibly, Ashley said, voice like glass. But the board will regret keeping you far more. One by one, the directors voted. The count was decisive. And swift. Mrs. Westwood rose slowly, gathering her bag with icy composure. But as she passed Ashley, she paused, leaning in just enough for only her to hear. You've won this round. But when I strike back, I won't miss. Lips curved slightly. Neither will I. Mrs. Westwood swept out, cameras flashing in the hallway. Ashley closed her folder and looked across the table at David for the first time. There was no mask between them, only the knowledge that war had been declared, and the next battle would be bloodier. 3 days later, the Westwood estate glowed under the warm lights of an exclusive charity gala. Champagne flutes clinked, a string quartet played in the corner, and guests in shimmering gowns and tailored tuxedos drifted between marble pillars. Mrs. Westwood stood near the balcony, flawless as ever, her lips barely moving as she spoke into the diamond-encrusted earpiece hidden beneath her hair. Have you found her? She murmured. A voice crackled back, deep male and edged with satisfaction. "Oh, I've found her, and trust me, Ashley won't see me coming." Mrs. Westwood's eyes glittered. "Good. I want her destroyed publicly. Quiet ruin is too kind." She ended the call and turned back to her guests, her smile warm and full stop. Meanwhile, across town, Ashley sat in a dimly lit cafe with her laptop open, reviewing financial reports for Westwood Enterprises. David was still recovering, and she'd taken over more of the company's operations, consolidating her influence with surgical precision. Her phone buzzed. A private number. She hesitated, then answered. "Ashley, David Westwood." The voice was calm, almost pleasant, male. But beneath the tone was something familiar. Speaking, she said, every nerve on alert. "It's been a long time. I hear you've been busy climbing ladders, making enemies, playing perfect fiancé. But tell me, have you told David what you did back in Halton Bay?" Froze. Halton Bay, a name she hadn't heard in years. Who is this? A soft chuckle. "Let's just say someone who owes your future mother-in-law a favor. And someone who remembers exactly what you left behind." The line went dead. Ashley closed her laptop slowly, her reflection in the cafe window pale but steady. Whoever this man was, he wasn't bluffing. And Mrs. Westwood had just drawn first blood. She reached for her phone again, but this time she wasn't calling David. She was calling someone from her own past. If Mrs. Westwood thought Ashley would fight this war alone, she was about to learn differently. The call connected on the third ring. "Ash, you're alive." The voice was low, cautious, and unmistakably female. Barely. Ashley replied. "And I'm guessing you saw the news?" "I saw more than that," the woman said. "Your little stunt with Alicia, bold, dangerous. Exactly what I'd expect from you. But if Mrs. Westwood's digging up Halton Bay, you're running out of time." "That's why I called," Ashley said, leaning back in her chair, eyes scanning the cafe's glass door for shadows. "I need you to find everything from that year. Records, witnesses, surveillance. Anything that proves I wasn't the one who..." She stopped herself. "Old habits, too many ears." The woman chuckled darkly. "Still paranoid? Good. Give me 48 hours. But Ashley..." "Yes, you're playing a bigger game now. People like Mrs. Westwood, they don't just want you out. They want you erased. If I'm helping you, it's all in, no halfway." Ashley's lips curved. "That's why I called you, Mara. I need someone who remembers how I fight when I'm cornered." That night, back at the estate, Ashley found David in the study, going through contracts with a distant expression. His recovery had been steady, but the shadows under his eyes told her he was still replaying the night Alicia was arrested. He looked up when she entered. "Ash, what's going on? My mother's been too quiet, and you've been making calls at all hours." Ashley stepped closer, her hand brushing his shoulder. "David, I need you to trust me for a little longer. Things are moving, and I can't afford to give our enemies even a whisper of what's coming." "Enemies?" His brows furrowed. "Ashley, what aren't you telling me?" Her answer was simple. "Everything you don't know yet is for your protection." David's jaw tightened. "And if I don't want your protection, then you'd be giving Mrs. Westwood exactly what she wants, an opening." They held each other's gaze, an unspoken storm passing between them. David finally exhaled, looking away. "Fine. But when this is over, no more secrets." Ashley didn't promise. Scootin' dot. In the shadows outside the estate gates, a black sedan idled. Inside, a man in a tailored coat lit a cigarette, watching the lit windows. His phone vibrated with a message. "Target confirmed. Stand by." The ember flared as he inhaled, his eyes narrowing. "Let's see how you handle the past, Ashley." The first cold drop hit Ashley's cheek before she heard the gravel crunch behind her. Rain was coming, and so was trouble. She didn't turn. Her reflection in the rain-streaked glass door of the guest house told her enough. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the careful gait of someone who'd done this before. "You've been watching me for 3 nights," she said quietly. "You can step out of the shadows now, Mr. Callahan." There was a pause, then a low, surprised laugh. "So the lady knows my name. Impressive." Ashley finally faced him. "Your real name, not the one Mrs. Westwood's people use when they hire you. I've read your file. Belfast, 2012. You've gotten sloppier since then." His smirk faded. "Careful, Miss Westwood. Should I say Miss Harlow? It's the name on the sealed Halton Bay records." She stepped closer until the scent of cigarette smoke and rain met her. "You want leverage. Do you think threatening me with my past will earn you your paycheck? Let me make this clear. If you were smart, you'd be taking your car keys and leaving town. Tonight." Callahan tilted his head. "Or what?" Ashley's phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She didn't look down. "Or the evidence I sent to my contact will hit the inspector's desk before you get halfway down the driveway, including the surveillance clip from the marina that proves exactly where you were last Friday when, let's just say, someone didn't make it home." For the first time, his eyes narrowed in calculation instead of mockery. "You're bluffing." Ashley's smile was slow, lethal. "Try me." The rain came harder now, drumming against the gravel between them. Callahan glanced toward the gates, jaw tight, before taking a step back. "This isn't over," he said. Ashley's gaze didn't waver. "It is if you're smart." He turned and walked into the rain, the black sedan's engine roaring to life seconds later. Only then did Ashley pull out her phone and swipe open a live call still recording. "Mara," she said, her voice low. "We have confirmation. Mrs. Westwood's running out of ponds." Mara's voice crackled through the line, closer to David. "That means family, Ashley. You sure you're ready for that?" Ashley watched the taillights vanish beyond the iron gates. "She's going to push him into the line of fire without him even knowing it. And if I don't move fast, she'll succeed." Inside the main house, the scent of expensive cologne and fresh roses met her. But it wasn't from David's room. It was coming from the east wing, the one nobody entered except on Mrs. Westwood's orders. She stepped into the corridor, her heels silent on the plush carpet. The double doors ahead stood slightly ajar, and a low, familiar voice drifted out. "She doesn't belong here, Aunt Claudia. She's already changed him. Can see it." Ashley froze. It was Lucas, David's younger cousin, the one who'd smiled at her at dinner 2 nights ago, who'd held her chair and told her she was good for David. Now, in a hushed, urgent tone, he continued, "You give me the signal, I can. Get her out of the way. No police, no mess. Just gone." A glass clinked. Mrs. Westwood's smooth voice followed. "I knew I could count on you, dear boy, but make it look like her fault. David must believe she left him." Ashley's grip tightened on her phone. The faint sound of a camera shutter. Mara listening in through the parabolic mic from the van outside. She stepped back into the shadows, heart steady. If they wanted a disappearance, she'd give them one. But it wouldn't be hers by morning. The plan was already in motion. Ashley left a folded note on David's nightstand, written in her neat, slanted script. "David, I'm sorry. I can't live like this. I love you too much to keep hurting you. On the vanity." She placed her engagement ring, a glittering symbol now stripped of meaning, right where he'd see it the moment he woke. Then she slipped out before sunrise, her movements ghost-like, captured only by the silent lenses of Mara's hidden cameras. Across town, in a rented safe house, Ashley watched the Westwood estate come alive in chaos. David's voice, hoarse with panic, echoed faintly over the surveillance feed. She wouldn't just leave. Find her now. Lucas arrived within the hour. All false concern. "We'll track her down, cousin. I'll make sure she's safe." His eyes, however, flickered with satisfaction, the exact reaction Ashley had baited in the East Wing. Mrs. Westwood paced her phone to her ear. "Yes, it's done. The girl is gone." Ashley allowed herself the faintest smile. Every word. Every gesture was being recorded in crisp detail. Soon, both Lucas and Mrs. Westwood would believe the other had botched the job, and when suspicion turned inward, they'd destroy each other from the inside. She leaned back, whispering to Mara, "Revenge number 3 begins now." It started subtly, just as Ashley intended. By midday, the estate was no longer quiet, but thick with tension. Lucas stormed into Mrs. Westwood's private study without knocking, his voice low and sharp. "You said this would be clean." She'd disappear without a trace. Mrs. Westwood's head snapped up. "And she has. What's your problem?" "My problem," Lucas hissed, "is that David's now offering a $500,000 reward for any information. Do you know how? Many eyes that will put on us. If anyone traces this back to you, you mean?" She cut in, her tone like a knife. "Don't think I haven't noticed your little side deals, Lucas. You've been circling his position for months. You think I don't see you trying to make him unfit to lead?" For a moment, the air in the room was still. Then Lucas smirked. But it didn't reach his eyes. "Careful, Auntie. You start throwing accusations, and I might start telling David about your hands in his accounts." From her vantage point in the safe house, Ashley hit pause on the feed. Studying the frozen frame, Mrs. Westwood leaning forward like a cobra about to strike. Lucas's jaw tight with contained fury. She knew what was coming next. Paranoia. And paranoia made people sloppy. Mara's voice was calm in her earpiece. "They'll turn on each other in days, maybe hours. But you'll need a catalyst to push them over the edge." Ashley's eyes narrowed. "Then it's time to give them one." She reached for her phone and typed a message to an unlisted number. "Drop the envelope in Lucas's car. Don't get seen." Dot inside that envelope was a single photograph. Mrs. Westwood shaking hands with Alicia Thompson. Timestamp 2 weeks before the attempted assault on David. The fuse was lit. The envelope sat on the passenger seat of Lucas's black Jaguar, plain and unmarked, as if it had been there forever. He didn't notice it until he slid in and reached for his sunglasses. One glance at the photograph inside, and his pupils shrank. Mrs. Westwood, Alicia Thompson, smiling, handshake firm. It's meeting like two predators sealing a pact. The timestamp burned at the bottom. It's cornered 2 weeks before David's poisoning. Lucas's first instinct was denial. But the longer he stared, the more it fit. The secrecy, the overconfidence. The fact that Mrs. Westwood had pushed so hard for Alicia to be included in the Gala guest list, even over his objections. He crumpled the photo in his fist. This wasn't loyalty. This was betrayal. By the time he barged into her suite, he was shaking with a mixture of rage and adrenaline. "You were working with Alicia," he snapped, slamming the photo down on her desk. Mrs. Westwood didn't flinch, but her eyes flicked to the image, just for a fraction of a second. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter?" Lucas growled. "You set her on David to make him look weak, so you could swoop in," and her laughter was sharp and sudden, slicing through his words. "Lucas, you really think I needed Alicia for that? You're not half as clever as you imagine." "Ha!" But Lucas saw it now, the slight tremor in her hand, the way she avoided looking at the crumpled edge of the photo. She was worried. And if she was worried, that meant she was vulnerable. "I'm done taking orders," he said coldly. "From now on, we play on my terms." And with that, he left, but not before Ashley's hidden camera, tucked in the study lamp, caught every second of their exchange. Back at the safe house, Ashley leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. The cracks were spreading faster than she'd hoped. "Your move, Mrs. Westwood?" she murmured. "That night." Mrs. Westwood stood at the tall window of her penthouse, a glass of red wine swirling lazily in her hand. The city glittered beneath her like an obedient pet, but she could feel it slipping. Lucas, that arrogant, restless fool. He thought a single photograph was enough to unseat her, and Ashley was too quiet, too calm. She'd learned long ago that silence was more dangerous than fury. "Strike first," she whispered to herself. "Always strike first." She picked up her phone and dialed a secure number. Tell our friends in the press, she said smoothly, that Lucas Daniels has been laundering money through shell companies in the Caymans. Make sure the documents are convincing. The man on the other end chuckled darkly. And if he tries to prove his innocence, Mrs. Westwood's smile didn't reach her eyes. By the time he does, he'll be a pariah. No allies, no return. But what she didn't know, not yet, was that Ashley had intercepted that very call. In the quiet of the safe house, Ashley replayed the recording through her headphones. Her expression unreadable. Perfect, she murmured. She's digging her own grave. David, now fully recovered, stepped into the room, his voice low. You're ready to take them both down. Ashley closed the laptop and looked up at him. No, I'm ready to make them destroy each other, while Hope Nation watches it live. The next evening, the Westwood Empire Charity Gala glittered, with chandeliers, champagne, and secrets. It was the perfect battlefield, all their enemies in one gilded cage. Ashley arrived on David's arm, a vision in midnight silk, her every step calculated. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted. And Hope Nation, watching via a hidden live stream she had quietly activated, caught every second. On the far side of the room, Mrs. Westwood spotted her, lips curling into a mask of courtesy. Beside her stood Lucas, the tension in his jaw betraying the alliance they had pretended to form. Ashley's fingers brushed the tiny remote in her clutch. With a soft click, the massive LED screen behind the stage flickered to life. At first, it showed footage from earlier charity events, smiling faces, ribbon cuttings, safe fluff. Then the images changed. Mrs. Westwood's voice filled the air. Tell our friends in the press. Lucas Daniels has been laundering money through shell companies in the Caymans. Make sure the documents are convincing. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lucas's head snapped toward Mrs. Westwood, fury flaring in his eyes before anyone could react. A second clip played, this time Lucas's voice. She thinks she can control me. I'll bury her with her own skeletons. Wait until they hear how she blackmailed board members. The ballroom froze. Cameras swung wildly. David leaned closer to Ashley, his voice barely a whisper. You're pitting them against each other. Ashley's smile was cold and precise. No, David, I'm just letting the truth do the work. On stage, Mrs. Westwood and Lucas were no longer pretending. Words became shouts. Shouts became accusations. And in front of the city's elite and Hope Nation's live audience, the perfect Westwood legacy began to crumble in real time. The shouting escalated so quickly that the orchestra fell silent, leaving only the sound of furious voices echoing under the crystal chandeliers. You traitor! Mrs. Westwood hissed, pointing at Lucas. You think you can destroy me with half-truths? Lucas laughed bitterly, his face flushed. Half-truths. I learned from the best. Or should I tell them about Elias Tan, the charity donor who was really your offshore banker? The crowd erupted into murmurs, phones out, recording every word. Reporters began snapping shots like vultures sensing a kill. David straightened his tie, his arm still secure around Ashley's waist. Security's moving in, he murmured, nodding toward the far side of the ballroom where black-suited guards were pushing through. Ashley's eyes stayed on the chaos. Not for me, she said calmly, because at that exact moment, two uniformed officers stepped into the spotlight, flanking Inspector Marlowe, the same inspector Ashley had called the night before, Mrs. Eleanor Westwood. Mr. Lucas Daniels, Marlowe's voice rang out over the microphone. Crisp and unforgiving, you are both under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Gasps turned into shouts. Cameras flashed like lightning. On what evidence? Mrs. Westwood demanded. Ashley stepped forward then, the click of her heels deliberate. On the evidence you both handed me yourselves, she said softly, but her voice carried through the microphone she now held. And on the testimony of the people you thought were too small to matter. Lucas's face drained of color. You? Yes, Ashley cut in, her eyes like steel. Me. Mrs. Westwood's perfectly maintained poise shattered and she lunged, but two officers held her back. Lucas cursed under his breath, but he didn't resist. He knew it was over as they were led away through a wall of flashing cameras. Ashley turned back to David. His eyes searched hers, pride, gratitude, and 1,000 unspoken things between them. Revenge number 3, she whispered, complete. The ballroom buzzed with stunned whispers. But Ashley and David walked out like royalty, Hope Nation still watching every step. Outside, the night air was cool, and the city skyline glittered ahead. David stopped, looking at her intently. Ashley, what's next? Her lips curved into that knowing smile. The last one. The one who started it all. David's brow furrowed. You mean him? Ashley didn't answer right away. She turned, her gaze fixed on the distant city lights. Yes, the puppet master. It's the one pulling the strings long. Before you or I even knew there was a game being played. David's jaw tightened. He's not going to go down easy. He owns judges, police chiefs, half the media. That's why we won't just take him down, Ashley interrupted, her tone razor sharp. We'll strip him bare. Every deal, every bribe, every secret, he's buried. And when we're done, he won't have a shadow left to hide in. David's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Unknown number. Ashley smirked faintly. Answer it, it's for me. He put it on speaker. A deep, smooth voice slid through the line. Well played, Miss Westwood. Very entertaining. But you've wandered into waters that will swallow you whole. Walk away, and I might forget you exist. Ashley's eyes darkened, and her lips curved into a dangerous smile. Funny, I was just about to say the same thing to you. A pause. Then the man chuckled, a low, mocking sound. You have no idea what you've started. Correction, Ashley said, her voice cold as glass. I know exactly what I've started. I know exactly how it ends. She hung up without waiting for a reply. David stared at her. That was the last target, she finished. And now he knows I'm coming. The air between them felt charged, like the split second before lightning strikes. Ashley's hand tightened around the small flash drive in her pocket. The first piece of evidence in a game. That would decide everything. Hope Nation's going to love this, she murmured, more to herself than to David. Somewhere in the city, the puppet master was smiling. For now. 3 nights later, Ashley walked into the Grand Aurelian Hotel like she owned it. The marble floors reflected the golden chandeliers. The air scented faintly with expensive cigars and imported whiskey. To anyone watching, she was simply David, Westwood's fiancé, here to attend some high society gala. But under the soft silk gown was a razor-edged plan. The puppet master would be here tonight, mingling with dignitaries, laughing with politicians he owned. She wasn't here to meet him. She was here to plant the first seed of his undoing. David, in his tailored black suit, kept close but silent. He knew this was Ashley's arena now. As they entered the ballroom, whispers followed her like shadows. Cameras flashed. The puppet master liked to control the narrative. So she was going to give him a story he couldn't bury. She spotted him within minutes. Silver hair, perfectly cut tuxedo, a calm smile that didn't reach his eyes. Elias Crow, the man who had orchestrated scandals, bankruptcies, and deaths without ever leaving a fingerprint. Ashley didn't walk to him. She made him come to her dot when he finally approached. Drink in hand, he gave her a slow, appraising look. Ms. Westwood, he greeted smoothly. Or should I say, the woman who humiliated Alicia Thompson in front of half the city? Ashley tilted her head, her smile warm but unreadable. Funny you mention her. I was just thinking about how quickly rats scatter when you light a match. His eyes narrowed a fraction. Be careful, my dear. Matches can burn more than you intend. Ashley's hand brushed her clutch bag. where a hidden transmitter was already streaming their conversation to a secure channel. Hope Nation was listening live. "Oh, I intend for the fire to spread," she said sweetly. "And you, Mr. Crow, are standing in a very dry field." Crow's smile froze, just for a moment. Then it returned, softer, sharper. "I admire your courage," he said. "Shame it won't save you." Ashley's gaze didn't waver. "It's not courage," she whispered. "It's preparation." She clinked her glass to his and walked away, leaving him with the first thorn in his side. But as she moved through the crowd, she caught sight of a man near the bar, watching her too intently, speaking quietly into a hidden earpiece. Crow wasn't just on alert. He'd already set his counterattack in motion. Ashley didn't change her pace, but every step sharpened her awareness. The man at the bar wasn't just a bodyguard. His posture was too relaxed, his expression too calculated. And the earpiece, barely visible, told her he was receiving instructions, not giving them. Crow's messenger. David's voice came low beside her. "He's on your 6." Two more just came in from the side entrance. Ashley didn't look. "How far's Team Echo?" Already in position, David murmured. Her eyes flicked toward the mirrored wall, pretending to admire the room's decor. In the reflection, she caught the faint movement of Serena, her lead operative, slipping between guests in a dark green evening dress. The gown glittered just enough to draw eyes away from her real work, quietly marking. Crow's men with UV dust. Ashley reached the champagne tower and set her half-empty flute down. "Showtime," she picked up a fresh glass. But instead of drinking, she dipped her fingers in it as though idly fidgeting. The moisture smeared over the clasp of her clutch bag, activating the transmitter's second channel, a live trace on all intercepted communications in the room. Serena's voice crackled softly in Ashley's hidden earpiece. "Target 1. The bar just got the order. They're moving to isolate you after the toast. Crow wants you in his private suite upstairs. No witnesses." Ashley's smile didn't falter as a waiter passed. "Copy that. Ready to switch?" The lights dimmed slightly, a signal the hotel was preparing for the Gala's main toast. Crow's men shifted, their paths tightening around her like a closing net. David's hand brushed hers briefly, the only warning he could give in. Public. Ashley stepped forward into the spotlight as the host called her name to speak on behalf of David's family. She held the microphone delicately, every eye in the room on her, and by extension, every camera. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice warm and clear, "tonight is a celebration. But it's also a reminder that the truth, no matter how long it's buried, will always find a way to surface." She paused just enough for Crow's gaze to lock with hers across the ballroom. "And sometimes," she added, "it surfaces faster than the liars can run." A ripple of curious murmurs passed through the crowd. Behind her, Serena's team moved. The man from the bar never reached her. Instead, two security officials intercepted him quietly, guided by Echo's planted anonymous tip that he was carrying a concealed weapon. The UV dust on his sleeve glowed under the hotel's scanner. Crow kept his composure, but Ashley saw it, the faint tension in his jaw. This wasn't the trap he'd planned. The Gala's applause still echoed faintly in the marble corridors as Ashley and David exited through the service wing. Upstairs, at a corner suite overlooking the glittering city, Lionel Crow poured himself a measure of 12-year single malt. He didn't bother offering a glass to the three men standing in front of him, two of them fresh from being pulled out of the gala floor by hotel security, one with his jacket missing and the other with a faint trace of UV dust still glowing on his cuff. Crow took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving them. "You had one job," said evenly. The man from the bar swallowed. "She was surrounded. Bad people everywhere. I told you she would be ready." Crow cut in, his voice suddenly sharp. "That woman's been 3 steps ahead of the best I've paid to watch her. You don't walk into her line of sight unless you've already decided to fail." He set the glass down, pacing to the far side of the room where a leather-bound Folder lay on the desk. You think she's untouchable because she's clever? Crow continued, flipping open the folder. But clever doesn't save you when the world sees you for what you really are. He turned a page, revealing a glossy photo. Ashley stepping out of a black sedan, her hand briefly resting on the shoulder of a man whose face was turned away. The date stamp read 3 weeks ago. One of the men frowned. Who's the guy? Crow's thin smile returned. A ghost from her past. And the kind of ghost who could burn down everything she's built. If the right people saw him. In the right light. He slid another photo across the desk. This time, a clear shot. The man's face was visible, hardened, unmistakable. David's eyes, David's profile, but younger, sharper, and wearing the expression of someone who'd been on the wrong side of a prison door. This, Crow said softly, is going to be the knife I twist. 2 days later, Ashley sat in the sunlit corner of her office, going through the final set of partnership contracts for the Westwood Gray Foundation's new women's shelter initiative. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She frowned, but answered. Ashley Westwood. A low, unhurried voice slid through the line. Miss Westwood, you have quite a talent for removing obstacles. Ashley's fingers stilled over the papers. If you're selling something, you've called the wrong number. Oh, I'm not selling, the voice said, amused. I'm offering you a chance to save your perfect little life. I have a file, pictures, dates, records about a man you once knew. A man you didn't tell your fiancé about? Ashley's pulse didn't spike. She forced her voice steady. If you're trying blackmail, you'll need to be more creative. There was a faint rustle of paper on the other end. I think your David would find it unsettling to learn you were seen in the company of an ex-convict who happens to share his blood. The silence between them sharpened. I see that name means something to you, the caller murmured. Let's make this simple. You deliver me the contents of your late father's safety deposit box. Yes, that box saw the photos go to every major outlet by midnight. The line went dead. Ashley sat very still for a moment, her mind racing. Crow's style was all over. This, the calm cruelty, the inside knowledge. But the mention of sharing David's blood was the hook that lodged deep. She unlocked her desk drawer and pulled out the small, weathered key she'd carried for years. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a secure text from her assistant. Security alert, Lionel Crow spotted in Capitol Tower. Lobby, no appointment logged. Ashley's lips curved into a dangerous smile. Wrong move, Crow, she whispered. She reached for her coat. It's time she was going to make him play catch-up. The elevator chimed as Ashley stepped into the Capitol Tower lobby, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. Crow stood near the center, flanked by 2 men in tailored suits who looked more like bodyguards than business associates. He was taller than she remembered, leaner, his silvering hair slicked back, and his eyes carrying that same snake-like amusement. Well, he drawled, turning to face her fully. The Queen herself arrives. Ashley didn't slow her pace. If you wanted my attention, Lionel, there are less pathetic ways than threatening me with old photos. He smirked. Pathetic. My dear, I'm giving you a way out. That box you inherited, what's inside it could ruin far more than your little reputation. Whole empires could fall. Yours, David's, mine. Ashley stopped just short of him, lowering her voice so the lobby's hum swallowed her words. You always did overestimate your power. That box isn't for sale, and you won't get your hands on it. Crow's eyes glinted. Then you'll watch your fiancé's trust disintegrate before your wedding vows are even spoken. Ashley leaned in, her expression cool but her voice like glass. Try it, and when you do, I'll make sure the world knows about the offshore accounts in Vienna, so bribes to the Minister of Trade, and that pretty little shell company you've been using to move weapons across borders. For the first time, Crow's smirk faltered. You've been busy. I learned from the best, she said with a razor smile. Now get out of my building before I decide to test how fast your men can draw their guns against my security team." One of his bodyguards shifted uneasily. Crow gave her a long measuring look, then gestured for his men to follow. "This isn't over, Ashley," he murmured as he passed her. "Not by a long shot." She watched him leave, her expression unreadable, but inside the adrenaline surged. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Crow had hinted at something bigger. Something buried in that safety deposit box. And if it could topple empires, she was going to find out exactly what it was before he did. Ashley didn't go home that night. Instead, she drove straight to the Meridian Bank's private vault section, the one with 24-hour access and no digital paper trail. Her access card slid into the reader, the steel doors unlocking with a muted hiss. The manager on duty, an older man in a pressed navy suit, greeted her with a polite nod. "Miss Westwood, I was told to expect you," he said, producing a leather-bound logbook for her signature. The deposit box was larger than she remembered, the weight of it requiring both hands to pull onto the polished counter. The hinges groaned faintly when she lifted the lid. Inside, the first layer was deliberate misdirection. Neatly folded documents, title deeds, harmless contracts, the kind of thing anyone could see without raising suspicion. Ashley set them aside, her fingers brushing the bottom until she found the false panel. A small rusted latch clicked, revealing a second compartment. Her breath caught. Inside was a slim black journal bound in cracked leather. The initials JM were embossed in faded gold. Next to it lay a USB drive in a velvet pouch, and beneath, both a stack of photographs bound with twine. She untied the bundle. The first photo showed Lionel Crow shaking hands with a man she recognized instantly, Ambassador Reiner, at a private dinner. Nothing unusual until she noticed the date in the corner. It was taken 2 weeks after Reiner's official death. The next photo made her blood run cold. David's father, Richard Westwood, standing with both Crow and Reiner in what looked like a dimly lit warehouse. And in the background, wooden crates, marked with a foreign military insignia. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number, you shouldn't have opened it. We both have a problem." Ashley's grip on the photo tightened. Whoever sent that message wasn't Crow, which meant someone else knew about the box and they were already watching her. Ashley didn't look up at the cameras. She knew better than to give whoever was watching the satisfaction of seeing fear on her face. She slid the photos and USB back into the velvet pouch, locked the box, and signed out of the vault with the same calm composure she had walked in with. But as soon as she stepped into the underground parking lot, she noticed it. A silver sedan, windows tinted black, engine idling too quietly in the far corner. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she made her way to her car. The sound unnaturally loud in the still air. She unlocked the door, got in, and started the engine, but didn't drive away. Instead, she tilted the rearview mirror slightly. The sedan's headlights flicked on. Amateurs, she thought. If they wanted her scared, they were doing a poor job of hiding. She eased out of the parking bay, heading toward the exit ramp. The sedan followed, slow and deliberate, keeping 2 car lengths behind. Ashley didn't take the highway. Instead, she slipped into a maze of back streets, each turn more erratic than the last. Whoever was behind her stayed close at the 5th turn. She made her move, cutting suddenly into an unlit alley and killing her headlights. The sedan shot past without slowing. Ashley waited, counted. 1, 2, 3. Then she started her car again, pulling out behind them. The sedan's driver must have realized too late, because when they tried to speed up, Ashley was already snapping a picture of the license plate with her phone. She sent the plate. Number 2, a contact she hadn't used in over a year. Mara Keene. Mara's reply came within 30 seconds. "That's not Crow's men. That's Directorate Black." Ashley's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Directorate Black didn't follow people. They erased them. If they were watching her, it meant whatever was in that vault was bigger. Then Crow. And she had just stepped into a game where the rules were written in blood. Ashley didn't wait to go home. She drove to a 24-hour cafe near the harbor. One of those dim, wood-paneled places where the waitstaff didn't ask questions, and the regulars didn't make eye contact. She chose a corner booth with her back to the wall, ordered black coffee, and kept her phone on the table screen facing down. 23 minutes later, the door chimed. He was tall. It's too tall to be inconspicuous. Dark charcoal suit, no tie. Posture like someone who could break a man's wrist before the coffee cooled. He didn't glance around the room. He walked straight to her table and slid into the seat opposite her without asking. Ashley David Westwood. He said, not like an introduction, but like an accusation. His voice was calm, almost polite. You've been busy. She met his gaze, her face unreadable. You've been following me. He ignored the jab, setting a slim black folder on the table. What you took from the vault tonight. It doesn't belong to you, she arched a brow. Neither did Alicia Thompson's life, but that didn't stop her from trying to ruin mine. The man didn't blink. You have something that could destabilize people far more dangerous than Miss Thompson. My employers want it back, and if I say no, she asked, sipping her coffee like they were discussing the weather. He leaned forward just enough for her to notice the faint scar running from his temple into his hairline. Then you'll find out why we don't ask twice. For a moment, the cafe felt colder. Not from fear. Ashley never gave them that, but from the clarity of the moment. This wasn't a warning. It was a countdown. She smiled faintly, leaning back. Tell your employers. She paused, as if considering her words. If they want it back, they'll have to come get it. And I don't think they'll like how that ends. The man's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak again. He stood, slid the black folder toward her, walked out. Inside the folder was a single photograph taken earlier that evening. It showed Ashley standing in the underground vault, holding the velvet pouch. And in the reflection of the glass case behind her, second figure watching from the shadows. Ashley's hand froze on the folder, her eyes locked on the reflection in the photograph. The shape of the jawline, the tilt of the head, the faint scar near the left eyebrow. None of it belonged to a stranger. She knew that face. No, she remembered it. Burned into her mind from a time she had buried under layers of rage and steel. The man in the reflection was supposed to be dead. Her pulse didn't quicken, but the air around her seemed to narrow. She slid the photo back into the folder, closed it, and took another slow sip of coffee. Her mind, however, was no longer in the cafe 2 years ago. In the chaos of that night in Madrid, she had watched the warehouse collapse in flames. She'd stood there breathing smoke, believing that the man who had saved her life and betrayed her in the same hour was gone forever. Now here he was, watching, and if he was alive, then everything she thought she knew about who pulled the strings was a lie. She stood, tossing a few bills on the table, and walked out into the cold harbor air. The night was thick with fog, the kind that swallowed sound and made the world feel smaller. She opened her phone not to call anyone, but to send a single encrypted message. We need to meet, he's back. A response came faster than she expected. Not possible. He's dead. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, check the file drop, see for yourself. Somewhere behind her, a footstep echoed. It's just one. It's close enough to hear, far enough not to see. Ashley didn't turn around. If it was him, he'd let her know. And if it wasn't, well, her next revenge target might have just revealed themselves early. The meet was set for 12:45 a.m. It's an odd time, but that was deliberate. Too late for bystanders, too early for the city's real predators to stir. The location, Pier 9. The one with the rusted crane that hadn't worked in years. Ashley arrived 5 minutes early. Not because she trusted the other party to be punctual, but because she wanted to see the place empty before anyone else arrived. Her boots crunched lightly on the damp boards as she scanned the shadows. The fog clung thick here, swallowing the faint orange glow of the dock lamps. She could barely see 10 steps ahead, but she could smell the brine of the harbor and the faint metallic temps of old machinery. A soft click sounded behind her, subtle but unmistakable. "Safety off. Relax," she said without turning. "If you wanted me dead, I wouldn't have made it to the pier." From the mist stepped a tall, lean man in a charcoal coat. His eyes, sharp even in the dim light, betrayed irritation. "You sent me a ghost, Ash." His voice was low, clipped. "This isn't funny." She handed him the folder without a word. He flipped it open, and even in the fog she saw his knuckles whiten. "Impossible," he muttered. "We confirmed you thought you confirmed," she cut in. "We've both been played. Someone let us bury him in our minds so they could keep him moving in the shadows." He glanced up, his expression now hard as steel. "If he's alive, that changes everything. The whole operation was never ours to begin with," she finished. For a long moment they stood in the damp silence, both calculating, both realizing the scale of the deception. Then his gaze shifted over her shoulder, scanning the party. "And the fog, you were followed," he said. Ashley didn't need to ask how he knew. She could feel it too, now, the prickle of eyes on her, the faint scrape of movement on wet wood. She exhaled once, slow. "Then I guess we're about to find out who's been keeping the ghost company." The first shadow broke from the fog like a blade sliding from its sheath, fast, silent, purposeful. Then another. And another. Ashley's contact, Mason, moved. First, his coat sweeping aside as his pistol came up. 2 o'clock? 3 o'clock? He murmured. She didn't need the directions. Her eyes had already locked on the shapes fanning out, her mind mapping their angles of approach. "Not cops," she said under her breath. "Too smooth, too synchronized." The figures closed in, boots making no sound on the damp wood. The leader's face emerged, first hood up, jaw sharp, eyes cold. No hesitation. Whoever sent them had given one order: remove the problem. Ashley shifted her stance, weight evenly balanced. "How many bullets you got?" "Enough to make a point," Mason said. "Good," she replied, "because I'm about to make mine." The first attacker lunged, a curved blade glinting briefly in the docklight. Ashley sidestepped, caught his wrist, and twisted hard until she felt bone give. His knife clattered to the ground, spinning once before vanishing between the slats. Into Blackwater. Gunfire cracked short. Controlled bursts from Mason dropping to more shadows before they could close the gap. But the rest didn't break formation. If anything, they pressed harder. "They're not here to win," Ashley realized aloud. "They're here to stall." Mason's eyes narrowed. "Then who's moving while we're distracted?" She didn't answer because she already knew. And if she was right, David was no longer safe in his apartment.